Y'all come in and sit down. We gotta talk. They are saying Diddy is about to go broke. Now let's talk about it, y'all. Diddy thought he dodged the big one. No Smex trafficking conviction, no Rico convent conviction, just about 2 manic conventions. And this man thought he was just going tiptoe out the door with some bail. Now listen, Judge Aaron told him to sit down before he sits them down. But y'all, let's actually talk about how Diddy forgot one thing: the civil cases. And now Jane Doe, the SS courts, and every person who's ever got flown out under pressure just got a legal cheat code and they're coming straight for his money. Y'all, let's get into this because all I gotta say is, baby, we love to see it. Now, first of all, I want everybody on the internet to understand what Diddy was actually convicted of and why it's a civil lawsuit, Gold Marine. All right, so let's get into it because this part matters more than people and the duty supporters realize. A lot of Feds folks heard Mann Act and thought it was some dusty technical law. Now, I'm not gonna lie, it is dope. It is rooted in racism, white slavery. However, over the years, it evolved and is one now the most powerful tools that prosecutors use in sex trafficking. All right, y'all got that. Now let's get into this. All right, so the Mann Act noun is a federal mex crime statute, and baby, it has teeth. It carries prison time up to 20 years. And if you plead guilty or you're convicted, that stays on
Present,
your record for
and no
life.
longer has a
Now, baby,
voice who will
Diddy was
pursue
convicted.
justice for her
So what exactly
accusation.
was Diddy convicted of?
As of the
Under
Aiken
US
against
Code
Diddy,
24-21,
no expansion
the
of
Mann
the
Act makes it a
investigation,
federal felony
no
to
isolation
knowingly
orders,
transport
no
a person
equipment
across state
access,
lines
no
for the
suspension
purposes
of attorney
illegal Smithville
communication.
activity, whether that's prostitutes or coercive Smithville arrangements that violate state or federal D law. Now let's break this down legally because I need for people in the back to hear this. Knowingly means it wasn't accidental. You booked the flights, you arranged the hotel, you knew what was going to happen. For illegal Smithville activity includes SMEX under coercion, fraud, drugs, manipulation, or exploitation, not just formal prostitution. And crossing state lines turns it into a federal offense, not just a local scandal. And that's exactly what federal prosecutors allege that he did multiple times over multiple years to multiple women and the escorts. So even if the charges were sealed, okay, and even if he didn't serve time, which they are not sealed, and he is going to serve time, a conviction or guilty plea under the Mann Act means the federal government proved beyond a reasonable doubt that he uses power, wealth, and transportation access to commit sex trials, sex crimes. Maybe let that sit in. No, literally let it. Okay, now let's see. And here's why the conviction is a civil lawsuit jackpot. It removes the burden of proof for future plaintiffs. That's right. Jane Doe and the escorts don't need to prove that Diddy intended to exploit them across state lines. All they have to do is show up and say, Yana, here's his federal conviction. He's already been found guilty of doing this exact thing. They don't need him to be convicted of SMEX traffic. They only need to show by a preponderance of the evidence that it's more likely than not that he harmed them. A Mann Act conviction is like a neon sign for the judge saying, this man has done this before. This isn't theoretical. The Mann Act makes him legally vulnerable even without jail time, because let's be clear, Diddy may be able to avoid a lengthy prison sentence, but legally he's now a convicted SMX offender under federal law. That's admissible, that's powerful, and in a civil court, baby, that's money. The survivors don't need to prove consent was absent. They don't need to prove, oh, I didn't consent, I didn't want it. They don't have to sit up in front of those juries and listen to them watch all their horrors and being like, nah, you wanted. The law has already said it didn't matter because under the Mann Act, consent isn't valid if the sexual activity involved fraud, manipulation, or abuse of power. So when people say, well, they agreed to go, the court has already decided the agreement was not legally valid. You cannot legally agree to let somebody exploit you like that. Now here's the translation for the timeline and the people in the back. Diddy just didn't take a PR hit, y'all. He was legally branded as someone who exploits women using power, travel, and coercion. Even if he never wears an orange jumpsuit, and he will, even the best estimate Mark Garagos has him as a year, his money is now on the table and the bill is coming due. But y'all, let's also focus on the civil fallout. Look how this one, well, actually these two convictions opened the lawsuit floodgates. Diddy's Mann convention didn't close that chapter. It cracked the safe open because now, well, actually, yeah. Now that Diddy's been formally convicted of a federal sex crime, what's that mean? Take a guess. Every person who has ever been flown out, locked down, coerced, rugged, assaulted, manipulated, or just controlled by this man in a spectral context. Baby, they have legal ammo. There, who are we talking about? Jane Doe, the escorts, any background dancers, industry girlfriends, paid for plus ones. I'm just saying, and did he pay for their time, not their body? And the ones who were told this is how it works, get used to it. And anyone who had to play alone to survive, now thanks to collateral, estoppel, a legal term, Diddy can't just show up in court
and no longer
and
has
say,
a
"I
voice
didn't
who
do
will
that,"
pursue
because
justice
the
for her
federal government
accusation.
already said yes.
As of the
Yes,
Aiken
yes,
against
he did.
Diddy,
In fact,
no
do
expansion
that.
of the
Mann Act
investigation,
conviction
no
means
isolation
every
orders,
survivor's
no
legal
equipment
team gets to
access,
skip step
no
one.
suspension
They
of
don't have
attorney
to prove if
communication.
he's guilty. They get to focus on how much he owes. And baby, of course, this is about money, not prison. But again, don't let people screw you with the okie, okay? Don't let people screw you with the okie oak. Oh no, why are you doing civil? You just want money. Hell yeah, run that fool's pockets up. Because without that money, these people wouldn't be on their hands and knees, begging for pennies, doing his evil work. All right, this is about money, not prison. The criminal court gave us the label. The civil court is going to send the invoice under the Trafficking Victims Protection Act and the related civil statutes. These survivors can now sue for pain and suffering, psychological trauma, emotional distress, loss of income, punitive damage, attorney's fees, and lifetime therapy costs. And those numbers add up fast. If one woman wins a $5 million judgment, that sets a precedence for the next and the next and the next. And this is how predators lose everything after the verdict. Diddy is now one mistake away from losing it all, forever. And baby, we love to see it. And here, because you guys, I don't care. Listen, this is a point of discourse, but even a fool can see that right now. And by fools, I mean everybody but his supporters outside can see that now that there's a federal conviction on record. Diddy can never afford another mistake. If another Jane comes forward tomorrow, if he loses his temper in a hotel suite, if a party gets filmed, if a former assistant comes clean, or if an escort feels emboldened, baby Diddy is, because that one new lawsuit, that lawyer just walks in with the Mann Act paperwork and says, look at the pattern. He did this before. He's doing it again. The judge doesn't need a full trial. The judge doesn't need to guess. They already know who he is. And this time he can't claim innocence. He already signed that away. Baby, this is the final word on this fallout. Day 5 of the Diddy trial. Diddy trial verdict. Fallout, I guess. Did he thought that literally only being convicted of those 2 counts could save his empire? But what he really did was hand every survivor the legal weapon they were missing. He thought it was over, but the truth is, that signature under the Mann Act just made it open season for his life. Again, I want you guys to know, he pleaded guilty on 2 counts. And it's not even what he pleaded guilty for, it's what he admitted on the record. Mark Ignapiello admitted he was very violent, admitted he did all those horrible things. That's why he got denied bail. Everything he admitted in that court can be used in a civil suit. Baby, again, the Mann Act blew the door open. And get this, the feds might not be done. The Mann Act wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was a wedge, a crack in the dam. And now the water is rushing in civilly, and perhaps even criminally. Let's be clear, when the federal court convicts you under the Mann Act, you don't just lose reputation, you lose protection. How? Well, how about this? First, the civil floodgates are wide open. Every woman who thought, well, I can't sue, no one would believe me, now has something powerful in their corner in a federal conviction, confirming this man used SMMT's power and interstate travel to exploit women. This is the legal equivalent of blood in the water, and that sharks are circling with lawsuits, lawyers, and trauma timelines. And the Trafficking Victims Protecting Act, that's a T, which works hand in hand with the Mann Act, gives survivors up to 10 years from the date of discovery to file civil claims for coerced drug fuel manipulation, emotional and psychological abuse, commercial exploitation, and anything tied to a pattern of grooming and trafficking. And the best part is, they don't need a new conviction. They just need to say this happened to me too, and it matches what he's already been convicted of. This is copy and paste civil court goal. But here's the cold truth. He's not safe criminally either. And this is the one thing these Diddy supporters don't want to admit. Diddy thinks this Mann Act conviction was the end of it. A sealed deal, a quiet close. But that's not how feds play the long game. Let's look at the R. Kelly blueprint. First case, acquitted. Second, mistrial. Third, media circus, no charges. Fourth swing, boom, federal trafficking conviction. decades behind bars. The DOJ took 4 tries to build a perfect criminal case, and when they hit, baby, they hit hard. Same with Epstein, same with Weinstein.
Present,
Pattern
and no
cases
longer
take
has a
time,
voice
and now
who
the
will
Mann
pursue
Act
justice
conviction.
for her
The 2 of
accusation.
them has done 2 dangerous
As of the
things
taken
for
against Diddy,
It preserved
no
criminal
expansion of the
liability,
investigation,
because if any
no
new
isolation
victim steps
orders,
forward with a
no
fresh
equipment
federal
access,
violation,
no
or if any
suspension of
past
attorney
violations
communication.
falls within the statute of limitations, the feds can reopen an investigation with and file new charges. And this time they bring the pattern, and they might still get the RICO. Now I know what you're saying. Double jeopardy. They can never try him for RICO again. Yes, for the trafficking of Cassie and Jane, but for anybody else, still open season. So again, like I said, let's just say, did he lose his temper again like he allegedly did with Jane? Let's say the former employee hands over those rumored videos. Let's say someone flips a driver or manager a fix. If one more credible case lands on a prosecutor's desk, Diddy is not just writing checks, he's doing time. Diddy is in a holding pattern, y'all. One step from collapse. Now, right now. Again, this is dangerous legal limbo. The feds have enough to expose him. The civil suits are lining up to bankrupt him. One more misstep and he is R. Kelly too. He doesn't even have to assault anyone new. If a case from 2016-17 surfaces and falls within the 10-year window, he could be charged under the same law he just literally got convicted. But this time it's going to be worse. And because he's already a convicted SMEX offender, the next jury won't be asking if, they'll be asking how many years. Baby Diddy tried to close the door with a sealed deal, but what he really did was leave it unlocked and light a fire on the way. Civilly, he's vulnerable. Criminally, he's on probation without papers. Financially, the invoices are coming. Baby, one misstep, one more Jane, one more temper tantrum. And the government that let him slide this, I'm sorry, not the government, the jury that let him slide this time, baby, they will swing again. And next time they're saying they might not miss. Woo! Baby, this is some heavy stuff. What do y'all think about this? Because at the end of the day, Jane's case is just a start. Jane Doe may potentially file suit again. If she did, it would outline rugging, rape, psychological control, and exploitation across multiple states, the exact blueprint for the Mann Act charge. And because Diddy has already pled guilty to similar behavior, her legal team has momentum. But what happens when the escorts file? What happens when a second Jane Doe, if they exist, steps forward, or a third, or a fourth, or if even one wins a multi-million-dollar verdict, the rest will follow. This isn't a gossip headline anymore. It's mass tort territory. You guys keep this in mind, okay? And I want everybody to know this, and just keep hope alive because the universe always bends to the arc of truth. Okay, again, keep it in mind. Let's end this with a little hope and a little heat, because if you've been watching this and thinking, where's the justice? Baby, you're not alone. Diddy is, I don't think justice was served yet. There's whispers of charges in California, maybe New York, maybe federal RICO, and maybe they'll file, or maybe they won't. But I'm going to tell you what I do know, and what I do think. Justice doesn't always come in a form of a courtroom. Sometimes it shows up in a mirror. And Diddy is a man who survived off control, intimidation, manipulation for over 2 decades. That's not just strategy, that's identity. And now that identity is under threat, Diddy is no longer in control. He's being watched, he's being whispered about, he's being laughed at, he's being outed in court records, sealed deals, and public opinion. And a man like Diddy, baby, he doesn't collapse quietly. And lastly, that brings us to the real danger, Diddy's own nature. See, the most dangerous thing about Diddy isn't what's been proved, it's what he still believes he can get away with. And that's why whether or not charges are ever filed again, he's going to make a mistake, because Diddy can't help but Diddy. He can't stand being humiliated. He can't sit still. He can't stop asserting power even when the world is saying stop. So when you ask where justice
and no
is,
longer has a
it might not
voice who
be in
will
a
pursue
jury
justice
verdict.
for
It
her
might not come
accusation.
from the FBI, and
As
it
of
might
the
not come
taken
from
against Diddy,
California or New
no
York.
expansion
It
of the
might come from Diddy's own
investigation,
hand,
no
from-
isolation
from the one
orders,
bad night
no
where
equipment
he can't
access,
contain himself,
no suspension
from
of
the next
attorney
Jane he
communication.
underestimates, from the next phone he gets to destroy, from a fixer who's had enough, or from the escorts that have jet lag and they're mad he flew them out on Southwest Spirit Airlines. Baby, a reckoning is coming. And it's bigger than the courtroom. This is bigger than one trial. This is about power. This is about silence. This is about what happens when you spend 20 years playing God and thinking the world won't bite you back. So for every survivor, every viewer, every person who felt like they were losing hope. Don't, because justice isn't always loud, but it is patient, and it doesn't need a press release to hit. Sometimes the biggest fall comes not when the system stops you, but when your own ego drives you into the fire. And baby, Diddy is already holding that match. Anyway, y'all let me know what you think in the comments. I will talk to y'all later.